Presentation number 7, Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR, and Product Stewardship, a burning issue, just like this picture shows. This actually is a picture from a burning dump, and there's quite a few of these, more than you might like to imagine. In fact, a couple of them are right across the border in Mexico. Cal Recycle actually stationed a couple of people at the border to try to catch illegal shipping of tires to Mexico, where they end up at these types of burning dumps. EPR and product stewardship. Sometimes people think about these things being exactly the same, but they actually aren't the same. EPR, extended producer responsibility, kind of focuses on the producer responsibility. And so it uses financial incentives to encourage manufacturers to design environmentally friendly products by holding producers responsible for the costs of managing their products at the end of life. That's the idea anyhow. We'll talk about this at the end of the presentation. Regardless of whether you're talking about EPR or you're talking about product stewardship, there are players involved. Who are those players? There's producers, manufacturers, and sometimes those two terms get interchanged. In California, sometimes some of the manufacturers don't even show up in California as a producer or manufacturer because they're made in another country and then they're shipped imported by distributors. And the distributors actually then become the brand owner of some. Now, at one point in our nation's history, and of course around the world, people recycled or they're reduced and they're reused. There was a lot of products that were long-term, they were durable. You didn't have this plethora of so many disposable, discardable products and packaging and such. So that's a big problem, and it's an increasing problem. Our economic system is one way, linear, with disposal costs borne principally by the public sector that has no. Well, besides some of these problems I mentioned, there's often the more practical end of why EPR is important. The Burbank Recycling Center, that's just one example. Each day they receive about 100 tons of recyclables, and the workers sort glass, cardboard, plastics, used batteries, and discarded electronics, plus sometimes other things that they don't want to handle, like medical waste. Just like the picture here showing the gloved hand with a syringe. The syringe is often put into things like. Another example of the need for EPR. Surveys indicate that less than 5% of the over 3 billion sharp devices sold in the US, that's like syringes and things, that are sold annually are disposed in some type of closed container. Most of the remaining 95% are deposited unprotected in the household trash, and off it goes, either to a recycling center like Burbank or just directly into the trash and into the landfill. Or what's worse, just spread on the ground and then off to the ocean it goes. We would hope that there would be some ways that we could all cooperate and work together to solve some of these issues, but that's not really the case. There's a lot of issues associated with EPR and product stewardship. Sometimes international, national, state, regional, and local rules can all work at odds. There are a lot of times private sector decisions. It's my company, I make a decision, and we're not going to internalize all the costs of what happens with our products. Someone never even thinks about what happens to their product after its life. Well, there's a wide variety of materials or products that are, pretty much part of the EPR and PS, condition. And according to the source here, Product Stewardship Institute, in 2013, and of course this has changed a bit since then. It shows you across the country where the EPR and product stewardship programs are really being affected. The product types categories are like auto switches and batteries, carpets, cell. And in some ways, I think that it's really a shared responsibility. And this is something I had focused on quite a few years ago when I was developing some take back programs. Anyone who benefits must be responsible to do their part. It's not just, like expect the producers to do something if you're not going to participate, you're not going to manage things correctly, as a consumer. So I mean, it's got to be a shared responsibility from the point of origin to the point of discard and beyond. Um, some firms, well, if we are having problems, developing law, if it's so really difficult, what are some of the other options out there? I like material leasing for the future, in which we lease stuff, and that can assure that things will be brought back. Sort of like Apple's got a phone system in which you can use it for a year and then you return it, and then they repurpose that phone for somebody else. There can be voluntary return systems, um, and, um, and actually there's quite a few that we have. Some are I really enjoy and like material leasing. Leasing of products drives a longer term approach to product durability, and it actually has a lot to do with design because that's what Ricoh, for example, has done, and John Deere and several other companies. They really focus on how they can make their products more durable, and also how they can, once they get them back, how they can kind of take them apart and reuse what they can, recycle what they can't, and such, and minimize the amount of discarding that goes on. There are a number There are some other industry organized efforts that have been developed in response to law, but it was law that basically said this is the policy, this is where we want to go, and this is like in Europe. And industry came up with its own plan and program. They called that Packaging Recovery Organization Europe, Pro Europe, PRO Europe. And so they actually turned it into kind of a promotion. We're pro Europe, not con Europe, but pro. And many, oh, these poor fish, these plastic microbeads really do help exfoliate your skin. Yes, indeed, they do. Uh, California's got a very particular EPR approach, kind of product by product approach. The laws and regulations are sort of a patchwork of things, but there's sort of like, a rhyme behind they might say the madness of it, and that is folks have identified some of the more egregious types of packaging and things of this nature and focused on those, paint and mat. Nice thing about California's approach is that it does allow for both EPR and product stewardship for organizations to participate in a lot of different ways. Picture here, for example, Avita. I really recommend take a look at Avita. They got a great take it back program for their skincare products and a variety of other things. You can take your packaging back to them when you get more. So businesses, NGOs, that's non-governmental organizations, local governments can all get involved. And again, the things that we focus on are like phones and plastic bags. Well, one case study is pharmaceuticals, and that's kind of an important one because drugs do get into the water stream and they're in the ocean, and we're finding them in fish and and wildlife, and it's just like the wastewater treatment plants when people take drugs, they excrete it and it goes into the wastewater treatment plants, or they take these things and they throw it down the toilet and then it still goes to the wastewater treatment plants, but these wastewater treatment plants aren't equipped to handle this stuff. Most of it ends up being dissolved And what did they win? Well, what they did win was that medications, which are manufactured and produced, they're sold through pharmacies, consumers purchase the medications. There's got to be a take-back mechanism. And so unused, expired medications must be properly collected. Now, mostly that stuff goes back and has to be safely disposed of, which means landfill and incineration. Okay, so we're not out of the woods yet, but I provided a little bit of information on the side here about how this program. It seemed that we were going to have to fight this fight in every county in the West Coast, but fortunately, Senator Hannah Beth Jackson from Santa Barbara and some of her cohorts in the legislature in California created the nation's first statewide drug and needle take-back program. And it's actually funded by the pharmaceutical industry and was signed by the governor on September 30th, 2018. And that's called SB 212 or SB 212. And it requires the manufacturers of pharmaceutical drugs and medical sharps to establish. Now, there's also international examples, Zero Waste Italy. The gentleman in the middle there, uh, that's Dr. Paul Connett. He's going to be talking with us sometime in, I don't know, November, I think, and he'll be attending us from Italy. So I guess he's going to be kind of late at night, or if he's live. If he wants to do it live, I definitely would like that, but definitely I'm going to ask him to put together a short video for us. But a little bit more information about where EPR in Europe came from. This is like that green dot program. What's green dot? That's the license symbol of a European network of industry-funded systems for recycling the packaging materials of consumer goods. So you got all these types of containers that might be at a recycling location that people would take their stuff back to. And EPR was first formally introduced in Sweden by Thomas Lindquist in a 1990 report to the Swedish Ministry of the Environment. And he wrote at that time, EPR is an environmentally well. If you do want to find out more about EPR and product stewardship in California, I suggest Google CPSC, California Product Stewardship Council, great organization, and that organization exists in order to represent the consumer and local government in fighting for their rights to not have to be the disposal system for all these manufacturers. But there is some contentiousness about EPR. Sometimes local